So tell us, how did you guys get into the business?
Well, we had taken a year off from education and decided to travel. And somewhere along the way, because we had gone through this whole process of ridding ourselves of everything we owned, we realized we weren't tied to where we had been or the job we'd been doing. And we thought, well, if we didn't go back there, where would we live? What would we like to do? And the bookstore had been kind of a romantic
right.
notion for a long time. So we kind of came up with that idea, and so along the way on the trip, we started stopping in bookstores and talking to booksellers. And everybody we talked to said, almost everyone said, you know, if it's not a way to get rich, but it's a great way to make a living if you can make it work.
So even 28 years ago, they were saying it's not a way to get rich.
Right.
Yes, yeah.
And some things never change.
Some things
you know,
never
so
changed,
it's-
and it wasn't. But it's been a great living. The people we've met, from customers to other booksellers to publishers to vendors, you know, they've just been wonderful people.
And lots of people, of course,
it's been a great
authors and others that we've met
Right.
over the years too. So it's
Yeah.
been pretty great.
Yeah. So tell us a little bit about your store. What makes it unique?
Well, I think what makes it unique is what makes any good independent bookstore unique, and I think that's that it reflects the community we're located in. So for years we've bought books with particular people in mind and with our customers, you know, with the kinds of books that our customers have bought from us over the years, and so I think it's become sort of a community center, and I think that's what makes independent bookstores so great, and the similarity of them is that they really do reflect the community that they're located in and that they're involved with. And our store's been very involved with our community in lots of ways.
Customers don't think of it as a business, you know, which, you know, may be good or bad, but they think of us as a community center, as a community resource, and they don't think about us being a business.
Yeah.
That's true.
Tell us one or two books or author events which are very village books, which are like very consistent with the kind of things that do well at your store.
Well,
It could be recent or it could be something, you know, in the more distant past.
Well, we do over 250 author events a year. So,
Wow.
so there are a range of things we do, and so I guess what really is probably to say what's most typical is a little difficult. Some things that we're doing now that probably are a little different than people do is we have a once a month we tape before a live audience a radio variety show, and we do this with an author involved, and usually that author is interviewed, but sometimes the author does other sorts of does a monologue or something like that, or a reading from the book. And an interview sometimes, and we've had a range of people from our first author, and that was Erik Larson with his book Thunderstruck. We've had Sherman Alexie, we've had Bill Dietrich. We've had fairly recently, we had Laura Lippman on the program, and are lining up some great ones coming up for the summer. We'll have Elizabeth George on the program in June, I believe it is, and some things. Sherman Alexie will come back and do an outside program with us this fall. So our author events have been a mix of regional people, very local people in many cases, regional, and then more widespread. We've had a number of national authors. One of our very first big signings happened within a few months after we opened the store, and we had Tom Robbins for the first time, and of course Tom is a nationally known author, but Tom lives 30 miles from us, and fortunately he lives 30 miles from us because he came on December 7th of 1980 in a snowstorm. We had been getting calls. It was on a Sunday. We'd been getting phone calls.
We're a brand new store, basically.
Yeah, we're
6 months.
6 months old, and we've been getting phone calls all morning long, wondering, is he still coming? Is he still coming? We're telling everybody, yes, he's still coming. And then the phone rang, and it was Tom, and he said, should I still come? And we said, yes. and he did, and he signed, and it was a huge event. So it was a huge event for being
on the front page of the local paper the next day.
Right. So it was just, and that was sort of the kickoff to something we've kind of branded our store by events. I mean, events are a big part of what we do in the community, of connecting people with authors and in all kinds of ways, and we try to find a variety of ways to do that. So,
is it easy to get big name authors? And I see you had several big name authors at your store, given your location. And
it's becoming, and that is interesting, because we are located outside of a media market, and you typically big name authors travel in the larger media markets, and I believe that Seattle is the number 12 media market in the United States. So there are a number of people who come to Seattle, but we're another 90 miles north of Seattle. And so over the years, we've, Rick Simonson, who is at Elliott Bay Book Company in Seattle, has been, in the early years, was just really great for us, because he would tell publishers that you should send your author to Bellingham, you should send them up to Village Books. And so he directed some people. I think what's probably happened over the years is that authors have had great experiences there, and then they tell their publicists that they would like to go back to our store.
Or their publicist knows the store.
Publicists might know the store from an event. The audiences that we have seem to be incredibly responsive. I mean, we get this from people all the time, that the audiences that we have for our events are much more responsive than some audiences they have in very large cities and very well-known places, you know. And I remember, was it Elizabeth Berg? Who was it that said the thing? It was Elizabeth Berg. Elizabeth Berg, when she was visiting the store one time, was reading along, and she said, "I can hear you listening." You know, and I just thought it was such a wonderful line.
Yeah.
And then and I can't remember who the other author, but it was.
It was Daniel Quinn. I don't know if it's the story
No. This is not the story I was
thinking
thinking of. The other author was someone who said he read a line. He read a line, and the people in the audience laughed, and he stopped and he looked up and he said, "I've read that same line all across the country, and you're the first people who've gotten it," you know. But Daniel Quinn, who wrote Ishmael, came not for Ishmael, but one of his later books, and he said at the end of that evening that he had heard the best questions he had heard anywhere. You know, a lot of people who have a lot of intellectual interest in books, and I don't mean intellectual in a snobbish way. I mean, they're interested in a wide range of books and ideas and everything. So yeah, it's been the way that's really just built up over time. Authors have had a good experience. There are some authors who come back regularly when they have a new book. Others who hear that we are doing something interesting. The radio program is, each of the authors that's done it has really enjoyed doing the program. And I think that word kind of passes on, you know. So.
How do you feel you've cultivated an educated audience, so to speak? Like, if they're asking really good questions, is that something that
I think that's reflective of our community.
Yeah.
I think we have a community, which was part of the reason we chose Bellingham, is that there is a university there. It has one of the highest library usages in Washington, which has one of the highest library usages in the country. So I think it's indicative of the kind of intellectual curiosity that exists in the community.
Is that like?
Well, you know, there are a lot of people who've come to Bellingham to go to school at the university, and then have stayed. And so one of the things we encountered when we first opened up the store was there were such a variety of people doing what you would consider perhaps mundane jobs who had degrees. So two of the first people I remember meeting, one who remains in Bellingham and is a friend, he was a house painter with a master's degree in English literature, you know.
Right.
And so what Toby did in his off time wasn't, you know, going down to the local tavern and watching sports on TV. He was reading books.
Right.
A lot of the local fishermen in our community are guys who started out when they were in college, going to Alaska in the summertime and fishing, suddenly realizing they were making more money in the summer fishing than they would if they were going to be teachers or whatever they might do at that time. Many of them started fishing as a profession. Many of them now own processor boats and whatever. And these guys come and load up on books before they head for Alaska for their fishing season, you know. So I think part of it is really, I think Dee's right. I think it's very reflective of the community we're in. people have chosen to live there because it's a beautiful place to live. It's a wonderful community. And they've done whatever they had to do to stay there, and it may not be what they were educated or trained to do. But they have intellectual interests, and again, I don't want to overemphasize the intellectual. I mean, it's they're readers,
Right.
so they read all kinds of
They're
things,
interested
and
in ideas.
they,
Yeah.
and so I think that makes, I think the kind of store that we operate with the kind of events we do and everything wouldn't be possible in many communities of 75,000 people. I mean, I just don't think that's possible.
Right.
Dee, I got a question for you. What is it like to work with Chuck?